The diplomatic incident, Ambassador. David Chin stood before the Galactic Council's assembled representatives, his weathered hands gripping the edges of the obsidian podium. 247 species watched him through various sensory organs, some with eyes, others with thermal receptors, and a few through means human. Science still struggled to comprehend. The council chamber stretched for kilometers in every direction, testament to the scale and grandeur of civilizations that had navigated the stars for millennia before humanity had even discovered fire. Honored delegates. Chin began his translator implant, carrying his words into 719 distinct languages and communication methods. I stand before you today to formally protest the Zethrine hegemony's military build-up along the Sagittarius frontier. We have detected protest. The voice that interrupted him belonged to High Commander Vri of the Zethrine, a being that resembled a cross between a praying mantis and a suit of living armor. Its 4 primary eyes gleamed with what Chin had learned to recognize as contempt. The juvenile species presumes to lecture the Council on military matters. A wave of chittering, whistling, and electromagnetic pulses rippled through the chamber, the galactic equivalent of laughter. Chin's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. Humanity had been a probationary member of the Galactic Council for only 17 standard years, and their status as newcomers made them perpetual targets for dismissal. The Zethrine have positioned 17 battle fleets within striking distance of human colonies. Chin continued, his voice steady. Under Article 47 of the Mutual Defense Charter, we request Council oversight. Article 47 applies to conflicts between established member species. Interrupted Council Speaker Thala, a gaseous being whose form shifted within a containment field. Your probationary status limits certain protections. Chin had expected this. The Council operated on a hierarchy so ancient and entrenched that even the youngest of the established species had thousands of years of seniority over humanity, but he hadn't come unprepared. Then we invoke Article 12, the right of preservation. If the Council will not guarantee our security, we formally request permission to implement our own defensive measures. This caused a stir. Article 12 was rarely invoked. It essentially granted a species the right to arm itself without restriction if the Council failed to provide protection. High Commander Rex mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Defensive measures from the species that required rescue from their own planet's environmental collapse. The beings who had barely achieved faster than light travel when we found them. The Zethrine commander rose to its full 3-meter height. Human Chin, your people are infants playing with toys they don't understand. You have 3 colonies, 12 exploration vessels, and 1, it paused for effect, 1 military ship you laughably call a cruiser. The Xene hegemony commands 17,000 vessels of war and has held its territories for 40,000 of your years, which is precisely why we're seeking peaceful resolution. Shin replied, we don't want conflict. No, you want protection you haven't earned. Vri sneered, you want the Council to shield you while you pollute space with your primitive drives and your excessive emotional broadcasting. Your species radiates feelings across the quantum field like a dying star radiates heat. It's nauseating to sensitive species. Chin felt the heat rising in his cheeks. but forced himself to remain calm. Accusation wasn't entirely unfounded. Humanity did have an unusual psychic signature, something about human consciousness left traces in quantum space that many older species found distasteful. It was one of many reasons. They were barely tolerated. Our presence in the galaxy is a matter of public record, Chin said carefully. We followed every protocol, respected every territorial boundary, and contributed our scientific discoveries freely to the Council database. All we ask is the same respect afforded to other species. Respect is earned through strength and time. Human, you have neither. Vex. Translation came through ice cold. The Zithrine have decided that the regions you call the outer colonies are too strategically valuable to leave in the hands of children. We will be assuming control of those systems. You may retain your birth system and your two inner colonies as a gesture of our generosity. The chamber erupted in a chaos of sounds and signals. Several species began arguing at once, but Chin noticed something crucial. None of them were arguing on behalf of humanity. They were debating whether the Zithrine's claim had proper legal standing, whether the territories in question fell within established expansion rights, whether humanity's probationary status invalidated their territorial claims. Not one species stood to defend humanity's right to exist unmolested. Chin closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the 50 million humans spread across those outer colonies, families, children, scientists studying exotic phenomena, artists who had found inspiration in alien sunsets. All of them now designated as acceptable losses in a territorial dispute they had no part in creating. High Commander Vri, Chin said, his voice cutting through the noise with an edge that made even the translator implant seem to sharpen. If the Zen hegemony takes hostile action against human territories or human lives, we will consider it an act of war. The chamber fell silent. Then Vri began to laugh, a horrible clicking, scraping sound that the translator rendered as genuine amusement. War, you would declare war on the Zen hegemony with your 12 ships and your 3 colonies? The High Commander turned to address the Council. Honored delegates, I believe the human has just threatened us. How adorable. More laughter. Even some of the species that Chen had considered friendly seemed amused by the audacity. We don't want war, Chin said quietly, but we won't stand by while you slaughter our people. Then you will die standing, Vri replied. The Zithrine have already dispatched the 7th Fleet to your outer colonies. Your people have 30 standard days to evacuate. Any who remain will be removed by force if necessary. Chen's hands trembled, not with fear but with a rage so profound it threatened to overwhelm him. You're condemning innocent civilians. I'm claiming territory that was always rightfully ours. Vic interrupted. Your species should never have been allowed to expand beyond your birth system. Consider this a correction of the Council's initial generosity. Chin looked around the chamber one last time, searching for any sign of support, any indication that someone would stand with humanity. He found only indifference, calculation, and in some cases approval. The galaxy's ancient species had their own complex web of alliances and rivalries, and humanity was simply too new, too weak, and too strange to matter in their equations. Then let the record show, Shin said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber, that humanity sought peace, that we followed every law, respected every protocol, and asked only for the same rights afforded to all council species. Let the record also show that when peace was denied, when diplomacy was mocked, and when our people were threatened with annihilation, we gave one final warning. He turned to face High Commander Vri directly. Do not do this, you don't know what you're awakening. Vri's mandible spread wide in the Zine equivalent of a dismissive smile. Awakening human, the only thing your species will awaken to is the reality that this galaxy belongs to the strong. You are nothing, you have always been nothing, and soon you will return to the cosmic dust from which you came. Chin nodded slowly as if accepting something he'd long known was inevitable. 30 days, you said. 30 days. Until we arrive at your colonies. Whether you evacuate or not is immaterial to the hegemony. Then I have one request, Shin said. Grant us those 30 days without interference. No early strikes, no preemptive attacks. 30 days to prepare for what comes next. Prepare. Rex seemed genuinely curious now. What can you possibly prepare in 30 days that would matter? You'll see, Shin replied. He bowed formally to the council. Human gesture that translated poorly, but conveyed his intent. This will be humanity's last appearance before this body. We withdraw our application for council membership, effective immediately. We will vacate our embassy. Recall all human representatives from galactic space and sever all diplomatic channels. Running home to your cradle. World. Breck mocked. How appropriate. No, Shin said, and for the first time he allowed himself a small, cold smile. We're going home to make a decision we hoped we'd never have to make. We're going home to answer a question we've been asking ourselves since we first reached the stars. Are we alone in our capacity for mercy, or are we alone in our capacity for what comes when mercy is exhausted? He began to walk toward the chamber's exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. Human Chin, Speaker Thala, and LT Unk and GT's voice followed him, tinged with something that might have been concern. What decision? Chin paused at the threshold, looking back at the assembled might of 247 civilizations, none of whom had lifted a finger to prevent the coming slaughter of his people. The Zithrine High Commander is right, Chin said. Respect is earned through strength. For 17 years we've shown you our philosophy, our art, our science, and our capacity for cooperation. We thought that's what strength looked like, the strength to build rather than destroy, to uplift rather than conquer. We were wrong. You're not making sense, human. Vrek growled. 30 days, Chin repeated. In 30 days you'll understand perfectly. The Zine will have their war, and the galaxy will learn what humanity chose to be before we reach the stars, and what we can become again if we must. He left the chamber, the massive door sealing behind him with a finality that seemed to resonate through quantum space. Case itself. High Commander Vri watched him go, then turned to the council with a gesture of dismissal. Theatrical to the end, these humans have always been prone to emotional excess. The 7th Fleet will proceed as planned, but Speaker Thalas' containment field flickered with an unusual pattern, one that beings who had known the Speaker for centuries recognized as uncertainty. Perhaps the Speaker whispered to no one in particular. We should have asked why a species that could barely feed itself 200 years ago has been so insistent on maintaining only 12 exploration vessels Perhaps we should have wondered why they never built a fleet when they had the resources. Perhaps we should have asked what they were saving those resources for, but the warning went unheeded, drowned in the Council's move to its next agenda item. 27 light-years away. The colony ship New Horizon continued its peaceful journey toward the outer colonies, carrying 50,000 civilians, families, teachers, engineers, artists, and dreamers who had volunteered to build humanity's future among the stars. They had 13 days left to live. High Commander Vree had decided to send a message, and messages required examples. The New Horizon was unarmed, unshielded, and completely unprepared when the Zithrine 6 scout wing dropped out of faster-than-light travel in its path. The ship's captain, Elena Vasquez, had only enough time to send a single message back to Earth before the plasma torpedo struck. Tell them we died hoping for peace. Tell them not to. The transmission ended as the New Horizon became an expanding cloud of debris and dreams. When the news reached Earth 36 hours later, David Chin stood in the Central Command Center beneath Geneva, surrounded by men and women in military uniforms that hadn't been worn in public for 15 years. On the wall behind them hung a symbol that had been mothballed after humanity's first contact with alien life, a simple image that had once struck terror into human hearts. Mushroom cloud encircled by a red line. Below it, words in every human language. Never again unless we must. They killed them, Shin said, his voice hollow. They didn't even wait the 30 days. They murdered 50,000 civilians to make a point. General Sarah Mitchell, commander of Earth's Secret Defense Forces, studied the tactical displays, showing the positions of every Xene fleet, every Council world, and every strategic target humanity had quietly identified over 17 years of careful observation. The vote, she asked. Unanimous, Chin replied. Every nation, every colony, every ship. They wanted to know if we'd stand by our principles, even when facing extinction. The answer is yes, we stand by our principles, all of them, including the one we hoped we'd never need. He walked to the command console and placed his hand on the biometric scanner. Around the world, in hidden installations buried deep beneath mountains, ocean floors, and polar ice, ancient systems began to wake up. Systems that had been designed in humanity's darkest hour, refined, secret as they reached the stars, and held in reserve in the desperate hope they would never be needed. Authorization confirmed. The computer announced. Mercy protocol disengaged. Retaliation protocol active, awaiting final command input. Chin looked at the faces around him, people who had dedicated their lives to peace, who had swallowed insults and endured mockery because they believed in a better way. Now those same people wore expressions of cold determination. The Zithrine want to see our strength, Chin said. They want to understand why we should be respected. They're about to learn that humanity's greatest strength has always been our restraint, and our greatest terror has always been what we become. When that restraint is removed, he entered the final command codes. Let them burn, he whispered, and across human space, in the silence between stars, something ancient and terrible began to wake up. The awakening. 3 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal from galactic space, and the silence was becoming unnerving. High Commander Vree stood on the bridge of the Eternal Predator, flagship of the Zithrine hegemony's first battle fleet, studying the holographic display of what had once been human territory, 37 colony, world's research stations and outposts, all abandoned, not evacuated in panic, not destroyed by Zithrine forces, but systematically shut down and emptied, with disturbing efficiency. It makes no tactical sense, Admiral Crush observed, her carapace gleaming under the Brigig's amber lighting. They had warning they could have fortified, prepared defenses, made us pay for every meter of space. Instead, they simply left. Cowardice, Vic declared, though even he didn't sound entirely convinced. They realized the futility of resistance, perhaps, Cush said carefully, but High Commander, our intelligence division has been attempting to penetrate human space for weeks now. Every probe we send across their borders disappears, not destroyed. The energy signatures would be detectable, they just vanish. Equipment malfunction, 47 probes, all with identical malfunction patterns. Crush's secondary eyes fixed on her commander. And there's something else. The quantum background noise that the humans produce, that emotional radiation the Council found so distasteful, it's gone. Human space is silent, not just quiet, but absent. It's as if a volume of space containing billions of humans has become a perfect void. Vree waved a dismissive claw. They're hiding in their birth system, terrified and broken. Let them cower. The hegemony has claimed 23 former human colonies. Our expansion proceeds ahead of schedule. The Council has already recognized our territorial rights. Yes, Kresh agreed slowly, but have you noticed which species have gone silent in council chambers? The Tyrellians have recalled their ambassadors. The Kive Collective has withdrawn from border regions adjacent to human space. Even the hive mind of Proxima has begun relocating its constituent beings away from the human frontier. Irrelevant, they fear being associated with losers. Or Crush suggested quietly, they know something we don't. Before Vree could respond, an alarm shrieked across the bridge. Crush's claws flew across her command console, her expression shifting from curiosity to confusion to something approaching fear. High Commander, we're detecting an object emerging from subspace near the fourth planet of the Kepler 442 system. Its massive power signature is off the scale. The holographic display reconfigured, showing a structure that made several Zirine officers step back involuntarily. It was a perfect sphere, 3 km in diameter, composed of a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Across its surface, patterns emerged and shifted, not random but almost like breathing. Is it a ship? Vree demanded. Unknown. It's not matching any known design in the galactic database. Wait, we're receiving a transmission. Voice filled the bridge, speaking in flawless Zithrine. This is Memory Station 47. You are in violation of established human territory. You have 10 standard minutes to begin withdrawal procedures. This is your only warning. Vrek's mandibles clicked with irritation. Memory Station, is this some kind of human bluff? There's nothing in there. Technology database about High Commander. Crush interrupted her voice tight. Memory Station 47. That designation suggests there are at least 46 others, and I'm now detecting similar power signatures emerging across all former human territories. They're appearing everywhere we claimed colonies. The holographic display began to populate with markers, each one representing another massive sphere. Appearing from subspace, 7:15:23, the numbers kept climbing until 47 identical stations had materialized across what had been the Zen's newly claimed territory. Impossible to breathe. The energy required to build such structures, the resources, the time. They didn't build them recently, came a new voice, and every being on the bridge turned to see a human standing at the edge of the command deck. He had simply appeared as if materializing from nothing. Intruder! Vrek roared, but before anyone could react, the human raised a hand. Please, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to deliver a message that you should have received before. Your people decided to slaughter 50,000 civilians. The man looked tired, ancient. Despite appearing middle-aged, he wore simple military uniform with no visible rank insignia. My name is Dr. James Kavek. I'm one of the architects of what you're about to witness. Kill him, Vri ordered, but the weapons that fired passed through the human's form as if he were a hologram. Not a hologram, Kavek said, reading their confusion. I'm a quantum entangled consciousness projection. My body is safe on Earth. My awareness is here and in 17,000 other locations across the galaxy, delivering this same message to every Zen commander, every council delegate, and every species that decided humanity's extinction was an acceptable price for territorial expansion. He gestured to the display of memory stations. These aren't weapons, they're memorials. Each one contains the memories, personalities, and final thoughts of every human who died in the colonies. Your people claimed, the engineers who built terraforming equipment, the children who played in alien gardens, the artists who painted alien sunsets, all of them preserved in quantum storage, their consciousnesses held in perfect suspension. Why? Crush asked, her voice barely a whisper. So they could witness what comes next, Kavek replied. So they could vote on whether humanity should show mercy one final time or whether we should finally stop pretending that pacifism in the face of genocidal aggression is a virtue. Vrek's translator caught something in the human's tone that made his combat instinct scream a warning. Vote what? Vote. You wanted to see humanity strength, Kavek said, his projection solidifying, somehow becoming more real, more present. You mocked our 12 ships, our 3 colonies, our peaceful overtures. You called us children playing with toys. So let me tell you a story about those children, Commander. The bridge's holographic display shifted, showing Earth as it had been 200 years ago, a planet drowning in its own pollution, torn by war, facing extinction by its own hand. When we stood on the brink of annihilation, we made a choice. Every nation, every ideology, every competing interest agreed on one thing: we would rather die as a species than build the weapons necessary to ensure our mutual destruction. We called it the Mercy Protocol. We dismantled our nuclear arsenals, our biological weapons, our chemical horrors. We chose peace. The display shifted, showing massive construction projects in space, not ships but enormous facilities being built in the asteroid belt, in the Kuiper belt, in the Oort cloud. But we weren't naive, Kavek continued. We knew that when we reached the stars we might encounter species that didn't share our values, so we made a backup plan. We took all the resources we would have used to build a military fleet and invested them in something else. We called them the tombstone stations, because they would only activate if humanity was ever pushed to the brink of extinction. V-combat computer began screaming warnings. The 47 memory stations weren't the threat, they were markers, indicators, memorials for what was about to show them, Kovac said. Quietly, space itself seemed to tear open across the entire Zithrine frontier. Thousands of points of light emerged, each one a structure that made the memory stations look like children's toys, ships if they could be called ships, each one the size of a small moon, their hulls composed of exotic matter that shouldn't exist according to current galactic science. 263 tombstone dreadnoughts, Kovac explained as the Xene crew watched in horrified silence, each one powered by controlled singularities, each one armed with weapons we developed and then prayed we'd never need to use. Quantum shear drives that can delete matter from existence, causality weapons that can make entire fleets cease to have ever existed, stellar igniters that can force stars to go supernova, and each one crewed by human consciousness transfers, volunteers who agreed to give up their physical bodies to become eternal guardians. This is impossible, Vri whispered. The energy requirements alone, we had 200 years to prepare, Kovac said. While other species built traditional fleets, we hollowed out asteroids and built fusion reactors. While they engaged in territorial disputes, we mined neutron stars for exotic matter. While they played political games, we quietly pushed the boundaries of physics until we broke them. Every resource humanity could spare, every brilliant mind, every technological breakthrough, all of it poured into a single purpose, ensuring that if we ever faced extinction, we could respond with overwhelming force. The display shifted again, showing the Xene hegemony's 17,000 warships. They looked suddenly small, fragile, outdated. 263 tombstone dreadnoughts had positioned themselves throughout Xene space, each one capable of sterilizing multiple worlds. But here's the thing, Kovac continued, and his voice held a terrible sadness. We still don't want to use them. Even now, after you murdered 50,000 civilians, after you threatened our extinction, after you mocked our pleas for peace, we still gave you the vote. What vote? Crush asked, though she already knew the answer. Every preserved consciousness in the memory station voted. Every human who died because of Xerine aggression voted. Every colonist, every child, every dreamer who believed in a peaceful future, they all voted on whether humanity should show mercy or retaliation. Do you want to know the result? Silence reigned on the bridge. 97% voted for mercy, Kovac said, and something like wonder entered his voice. 97% of the people you killed voted to spare your species. They voted to give you one more chance to show you that strength doesn't have to mean destruction. They voted to believe that even after everything that's happened, peace might still be possible. Vri felt something he hadn't experienced in 40 years of military command, genuine fear. Then you won't attack the tombstone dreadnoughts will stand down, Kovac confirmed, but the memory stations remain. They will be permanent fixtures in every system you attempted to claim, eternal reminders of the price of aggression. And humanity is done seeking permission to exist. We're done being probationary members of your council. We're done accepting insults and derision because we choose philosophy. Over firepower, the human's projection began to fade, but his voice remained. Strong, return to your council. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that humanity offers one final choice. Recognize us as equals with all the rights and protections that entails, or face the consequences when our mercy finally runs out, because 97% voted for peace, Commander, but that means 3% voted for retaliation, and if you push us again, if you threaten human lives again, I can't guarantee the vote will go the same way. Wait, Crush called out as the projection dissolved. Why? Show us mercy after everything we've done. Kavek's voice echoed one last time, because that's what makes us human. We build gardens on hostile worlds, we compose symphonies in the void, and we choose mercy even when vengeance would be easier. We are not the monsters of your nightmares, but we can be if you force us. The choice is yours. The projection vanished, leaving the Zen bridge in stunned silence. 3 days later, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Ambassador David Chin returned to the chamber, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood representatives of every human colony, every research station, every ship that sailed between the stars, and on the screens above them, the preserved consciousnesses of the memory stations watched silently. Honored delegates, Speaker Thala began, its gaseous form rowing with what might have been embarrassment or possibly fear. The Council has reviewed humanity's petition for full membership status in light of recent revelations. The vote is unanimous. Humanity is hereby granted full Council membership, with all attendant rights and protections. Additionally, continued a Tyrellian delegate, the Council formally condemns the Zethrine hegemony's unprovoked attack on human civilians. All territories claimed from humanity are to be returned immediately. The hegemony will pay reparations and face sanctions until such time as we decline, Shin said, and the chamber fell. Silent. Decline, Thala repeated. Confused. The reparations, the sanctions, the punishment. We decline them all. Chin looked directly at High Commander Vri, who had been stripped of his command and brought before the Council to face judgment. Vengeance doesn't bring back the dead. It doesn't undo suffering. It only perpetuates cycles of violence. The memory stations will remain as monuments and warnings, but we won't seek revenge against the Zen people for the actions of their leaders. Then what do you want? Vri asked, and for the first time there was no arrogance in his voice, only genuine curiosity. Chin smiled, not cold or mocking, but genuinely warm. We want what we've always wanted: peace, cooperation, and the freedom to explore the universe alongside beings who see existence as something to be celebrated rather than dominated. We want the galaxy to understand that strength isn't measured only in weapons and territory, but in the courage to choose mercy when destruction would be easier. He turned to address the full Council. Humanity accepts full membership. We will share our technology, our philosophy, and our resources with any species willing to partner in genuine collaboration. We will help build a galaxy where disputes are settled with words, not weapons, and where every species, regardless of age or military might, is treated with dignity and respect. And if someone attacks you again, a Council member asked, Chen's expression became somber, then we'll face the same choice we faced 3 months ago. We'll vote as we always have on whether mercy serves the greater good, or whether survival demands a different response. 97% chose peace this time, but that percentage isn't fixed. It's a reflection of our faith in the possibility of a better universe. The more that faith is justified, the higher it will stay, the more it's betrayed. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the chamber understood perfectly. Over the following years, humanity became known across the galaxy, not for the tombstone dreadnoughts that still orbited silently in the clouds of their systems, but for the gardens they planted on lifeless worlds, the art they created in celebration of cosmic diversity, and the stubborn insistence that peace was always worth fighting for, even if fighting meant showing restraint. The memory stations became pilgrimage sites, places where beings from across the galaxy could experience the preserved thoughts of those who had died yet voted for mercy. Many who visited expecting to find rage or despair discovered instead hope, forgiveness, and an unshakable belief that their deaths could serve as bridges to a better future rather than justifications for revenge. High Commander Vree spent the rest of his life in voluntary exile, working at Memory Station 47 as a caretaker and teacher. He would tell visiting students about the day he learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their tombstone dreadnoughts or their quantum shear drives, but their capacity to look into the abyss of justified vengeance and choose to step back. They're terrifying, he would say in his later years, his carapace grayed with age and humility, not because of what they can do, but because of what they choose not to do. They are powerful enough to burn the galaxy and gentle enough to plant flowers in its ashes. They are the beings who remind us that true strength is measured not in how much destruction we can unleash, but in how much destruction we can prevent. On Earth, in the command center beneath Geneva, the tombstone dreadnoughts remained on eternal standby, crewed by volunteers who had given up mortal form to become humanity's final line of defense. They monitored the galaxy constantly, ready to act if the vote ever changed, ready to protect humanity if mercy was ever exhausted. But they also watched the gardens grow. They observed the partnerships form. They saw the galaxy slowly transform as species learned from humanity's example that peace wasn't weakness. It was the ultimate expression of strength. The symbol on the wall had been modified. The mushroom cloud remained encircled by its red line, but new words had been added beneath the old ones. Never again unless we must, but we hope we never must. And in the quantum void where human consciousness left its strange traces, a new pattern emerged. Not the chaotic emotional radiation the Council had once found distasteful, but something organized, intentional, beautiful. It was the combined voice of billions of humans, living and preserved, broadcasting a single message. Across space, we choose mercy, we choose peace, we choose to believe in a better universe. Join us. Most days the galaxy chose to join them, and on the days it didn't, the tombstone dreadnoughts waited silently in the dark, eternal guardians of a species that would rather dream than destroy, but possess the power to do both. The Mercy Protocol remained engaged for now,